Governed by Design at Resultant, and I have the great pleasure of having Ms. Gail Mason today with me. She is the Senior Vice President of Technology and Engineering at the American National Bank of Texas, and a very seasoned professional. You have a lot of years in the financial services business, and it is a great honor to have you. So thank you, Gail, for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. This is my first podcast, so I'm a little bit nervous, and I talk super fast. So I'll try to be aware of that myself.
That's because you've been too busy. That's why it's your first podcast, right? So today the topic is about implementing AI and all the considerations and all the things that have to be taken into account. There are listeners right now that are thinking, yes, I have to do it. I'm not entirely ready. We're too small or too this or too that. And I think you have great insights for that. Let's start with culture, Gail. What needs to happen there?
Culture is the big elephant in everyone's room, right? So, the bank where I work has been around for 150 years, roughly. We're going to celebrate our 150th year this year, as a matter of fact. And it's interesting to see how the culture has evolved over years. Now, with AI right now, I get asked this question probably not as often as I did a year ago, but it's when are we going to do AI? Or, how are we going to, what are we doing about AI? And I've always just kind of come back to, what do you mean do with AI? So I think the first thing you have to do to move your culture forward is become aware, and you have to educate yourself on what AI is. And not just you, but you need to train other people. So there's all different types of AI, right? There's generative AI, large language models, natural language processing, and all that's a little bit different. They all have different use cases. So you've got to educate yourself. You've got to educate the folks that are interested in building the use cases. And I think one way to really do that makes sense is to explore practical use cases. What are other folks in your industries, in my case, FIs, what are they doing with AI? What kind of use cases are they throwing, and then which type of AI are they throwing at it? So practical and industry-specific use cases kind of help with that, move the culture forward a little bit. And if you can, and this is one of the things that we found a lot of success with, and that's some hands-on proof of concept or small pilot work. So you can demonstrate the value of AI, and the culture can respond to that. You can expand this out to the business. You can expand this out to your compliance, regulatory teams, and it's not just your technical folks trying to push the latest and greatest shiny object at people. So collaboration amongst your peers and across the organization, in my case again a bank, is critically important. You've got to move that culture along, and you can't drive it as easily if you just try to make this an IT project.
Being that culture is so important, part of it is that feeling of maybe we're too small to do grand things, right? And yet we know that in reality that's not the case. So what does it mean like for an organization your size to be able to come in some areas from the back of the line to the very forefront and being able to lead? Walk us through that picture.
I love this question. I love this question because I think oftentimes we look at small banks and we say, the first thing we say is we don't have the deep pockets, right? We can't compete with a Wells Fargo or a Chase. Well, I think what we need to do is understand that although those are our competition, we need to take advantage of our unique our unique perspective, our unique position in the financial industry. Small banks can move a lot faster, right? Small banks there's not so much bureaucracy in some of the decision making. So, if you can take advantage of assembling the right team, you can do things like make quicker decisions and have rapid deployments and roll out changes faster. It's interesting from a bank's perspective. I've never worked anywhere that had unlimited funds, right? So you have to be very selective in how you spend money and justify some of that spend. And we talk about small banks, and we haven't really. Community banks have I guess a reputation of having legacy technology. Like we're very dependent on purchasing technology. There's only a handful of core providers that do core transactional systems, and we're all kind of the same in that regard. But what we can do from a small bank perspective is we can strategically invest in how we're going to modernize some of that technology, right? So if you can make fast decisions and you strategically invest in replacing some of that legacy technology, so that you can do things like you modernize your infrastructure. You want to partner with fintechs. You want to engage with maybe SaaS providers. You want to move to the cloud. There are things that you can do from a small bank perspective that will improve the operational efficiencies. They'll improve your security position. They can also help you comply with regulatory a lot faster than you could if you just tried to, bootstrap it through yourself. I think that that's one of the things that we've been pretty successful of is taking a look at where we are, where we have been, and how do you look forward 2 or 3 years? How do you modernize your infrastructure, modernize your technology, modernize your processes, right? So small banks can come from the back to the front by just being very selective in what their use cases are, right? So you can't do everything. We're not here to do everything. So maybe what you decide to do is, do you want to improve your revenue stream? Do you want to apply AI to improving the customer experience? Maybe it's you want to apply AI to improving your operational efficiencies. But all of that can be done. You just have to have a strategy. You just have to understand that small banks have, what's the word, the words I'm looking for? There's some advantages other than just saying it's a negative that you have technical debt or it's a negative that you're a small bank. You just have to be a little bit more selective in how you apply some of your strengths and skills that you've recognized. We can be fast, we can be nimble, and we can be strategic in our investments.
Right, that's phenomenal. It makes me think of those small cars in a European town that just go zigzag through
Yes.
all those difficult streets, right? Where the larger ones just can't.
Right. I found that sometimes when we're working with our executive team, it's we've gotten a lot better at not requiring the full blown solution. Right. It doesn't have to be perfect when we roll it out. So test and learn, experimentation has become very important. Limited budgets to do proof of concepts, but we can do them without having to go through 13 departments and 42 people making the decision. So it's you just have to demonstrate some small wins.
It's a great advantage. Now, on this topic of AI, there is so much noise, Gail,
Mhm.
right? So your staff, your team that is going to be just rallying around you and implementing your vision. What do you do about bringing that noise down? And they're using AI themselves as
Mhm.
consumers. So, how do you galvanize those forces and have them focus?
I think the biggest understatement that you're going to say this day is there's so much noise around AI. There is so much noise around AI. You need to say it with so much emphasis. It's this shiny new thing, right? There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of speculation around AI. So it's very, very important that you develop a vision and a strategy that's aligned with your corporate goals, right? You can't, it's so easy to get distracted by the shiny object or the greatest thing. And I've done some work on just taking a look at some case studies, and it's real hard to say I don't want to be the next Amazon, where you have the customer you present recommendations for a product, then you use AI to fulfill the product, then you use AI to ship the product. That's all great stuff, but that's not an applicable use case for a community bank, correct? So you have to really filter through the hype, as you say, the noise. So when you're developing your strategy, you have to curate your content, curate your information. You have to find some really trusted advisors. Because again, in a community bank, we just don't have the level of expertise from AI that maybe some of the larger groups can have. We don't have a department of AI, so we're relying upon some of our partners, our vendors, strong reliance on some consultants. We try to be very selective in what we use to curate and inform us on applicable uses for AI. It all kind of comes back to your strategy. Once you can kind of, as you say, galvanize, once you can kind of formulate where you want to go with AI, the noise kind of dissipates a little bit. All of that, you can kind of distill some of that and put it to the side. But that's all dependent on what your bank strategy is. In our case, we have what we call the 4 pillars, and it's around be the bank of choice. How are you going to have 24-hour banking, make data-driven or information-driven decisions. So some of that immediately kind of shrinks the volume that you hear. So when I'm developing or develop my AI strategy, I try to align what I want to accomplish with AI to those pillars. So that kind of weeded out some of the noise. I went in and I tried to identify, how do we want to apply AI? Is it a core function? Do we want to support those pillars? Or maybe it's a value proposition. What would deliver the biggest bang for the buck? Is it operational efficiencies? Is it, something more along the lines of chatbots that could, serve our customers? Do we want to do it just internally to test the waters out a little bit? And then you come down to developing the roadmap. Once you have a roadmap, and one thing I want to be loud about, emphatic about, is your roadmap has to be scalable, right? Your roadmap has to be, I call it modularization. It has to be, you have to be able to compartmentalize a little bit and also have some components around your roadmap because it's going to change. AI is evolving very quickly, right? If you look at just ChatGPT, they
That's right.
released what, two models in the last 45 days, I think. Your roadmap has to be very flexible. You can't lock yourself in the old traditional, in a bank, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years out. You really have to think more like a design thinking software company. You're locking your roadmap in for 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters out, and then you've got to reshuffle the deck as new things happen. But once you get that roadmap aligned to your strategy, which is aligned to your business strategy, the noise kind of falls to the side a little bit.
You would think that every organization, especially in financial services, has a strategy, knows how to do roadmaps, know how to remain agile. But there are some big companies that have come your way saying, Gail, how are you doing it? Because we're stuck. Right? Tell us about that.
That's another great question because I was stuck for a long time too. Um, it's a little bit overwhelming the amount of information that's there, right? And it's a little bit overwhelming when you read every day. My inbox is just full of people saying, "I've got this great tool, and we're doing this great thing with Chase, and oh my God, Wells Fargo, and oh my God, Bank of America, and oh by the way, there's Amazon and Google and all these other large organizations, and they're doing some wonderful and compelling things with I think what you have to do is you have to take all that information in and then again sift through it a little bit. The best way that, well, what got me off of High Center, if you will, with adopting something like, an AI or a large language model, or in our case, it was generative AI, is we did a small pilot, right? A small pilot, we engaged a trusted partner and we brought in a small model and we put it in a very secure environment in Azure and we air gapped it and we rolled out a very small use case. And we had some lessons learned. And in hindsight, I really regret that we didn't roll out a bigger use case. Had we done that, I don't know that we would have had the same lessons learned. It might have been less of a success than it was. So one of the things that really moved us off high center was to get our hands dirty, right? To actually roll a model out, test the model, engage the users, and it required a collaboration cross departmental, right? So we had a very collaborative team that was composed of product, IT, the vendor that we used that brought in some data scientists, legal, compliance, and governance. And that helped us inform what we wanted to do with our use cases with AI. We randomly selected a use case. We talked to a few people. We thought this would be a great use case. So we rolled out some specific proprietary information, turned it up for the groups that use that, and just asked them to pound away on this model. And they did, and we learned a lot of things, and it was a success. And what it's done now, Paul, is it's helped us inform our next iteration for this model. We're calling it Wave 2, and then it's really kind of helped us inform Wave 3 and 4. So,
Right.
we're talking about maybe doing some mixed models now. It was a resounding success because it got everybody's confidence, right? So that's what helped us move forward. Is you've got to at some point in time declare and then
Yeah.
just try it.
Yeah.
It's a fear thing, right? But if you don't try something, you're not going to learn anything. And
That's
there's so many models that are available right now that offer free tutorials, right? So you don't even have to invest any money. You can just
That's
turn
right.
a small team and go out there and do something with some of the open source stuff
Yeah.
and just learn a little bit about it.
And I love the fact that you air gapped it, you put such tight rails on it. It builds the confidence and trust
Mm-hmm.
of those that are playing with it as you have asked them to get involved. Now, that confidence, I'm sure, takes you back to rethinking some things on your stack and on your solutions, right? So, what does it look like now for you, not seeing just AI as a tool with the techniques within it that you want to be able to leverage, but now the embedded attributes of your stack? How are you making your choices?
This is a great question, and I want to take total credit for this, but I can't. So I'll share some credit. So we've known AI was coming for a while, right? And we didn't know to what degree. We weren't really, I guess, aware of the impact that Gen AI was going to have. But we've had AI in the environment for things like fraud detection and anomaly detection for some time, and we didn't build the models. We purchased the models. And one thing that became very clear very early is the importance of data, right? So we're on I'm calling it V2 of our enterprise data warehouse, and we engage with a SaaS service, a trusted partner, to help us with the actual structure of the data warehouse. And then we engaged with a data-driven partner, Resultant, and they helped give us some really great advice on what we should do with the data warehouse and how we should structure the data environment around governance, around how scalable should it be, what do you want to bring into the warehouse, how does that need to look, do you need Mark, do you need Lake? So we tried to build the data warehouse from a perspective of scalability. What are we going to need it for a couple of years? And then we took a look at data governance because we know we had a bunch of stuff in the warehouse. We had all this data, we had all this stuff in the warehouse. And we built it wrong. The first shoot, the first time out of the shoot, we built it wrong. We built it based on the same schema that we had in our core product provider. And then we decided to change course. So we're like, well, our warehouse is full of all this stuff that nobody can use now because we're changing core provider. So we learned a pretty valuable lesson there that you need to build it in a more agnostic manner. Then we took a look at how do we move data into the warehouse. So, I'm very particular now on our orchestration layer. I'm very particular that it has to also be scalable. And how do you build APIs? How do you build microservices? So everything that we've selected from a tech stack has to be very flexible, very componentable. It has to be something that you can build upon, regardless of what's on either side of it. And I hate to use the phrase plug and play, but I really kind of want it to be plug it in, plug it out, plug the next thing in. And that's where we're going from a strategy perspective. Governance has been huge. So I'm taking a real hard look at, what are we doing from a governance perspective, and not just our internal tool or our internal resources, but what are the governance practices of the people that we engage with? Because again, we don't have a large development team. We're not, as a community bank, going to develop our own transactional systems, our own loan origination systems, our own loan processing system. We're going to partner with folks for that. So our selection now has been kind of AI first. What do we look for in a vendor? We want someone who's got a AI strategy. What are you going to do with AI? And can you explain it? Because that's been something else that's been a real lesson learned for me personally, is there's an AI model and you just kind of, okay, this is great. I'm taking it at their value. They've got an AI model. And then model risk management regulations came out. So our AI partners have to be able to explain their model. They have to be able, their model has to be transparent. We have put practices in place and changed some of our tech stack around validation of models. How we build sandboxes now is different because we want to be able to test and kick the tires on some of our models. We want our users to experiment. So, sandboxes have been important. And then probably one of the biggest things we've done is we are moving to the cloud from a data center perspective, right? We've got, presence in Azure and presence in AWS, and working with those vendors on, how to secure AI. So our tech stack has really evolved to more of a controlled, access, role-based access has been strengthened. How do you support some of the policies? The governance aspect is completely different than it was even last year. We've had a governance technology in place now for over a year, but that's really rolled out. And then around more about, I hate to say validation, because we don't have any regulatory requirements that have been issued for banks our size yet around AI, but they're coming, right? So, how do you explain that? So some of the work around our tech stack around explainability, I think is going to be really important. Security is first and foremost by far, but how do you validate and prove the security?
Right. Right. Those questions are coming from legal teams at some point, and having that defensible posture is important with a reasonable approach. And everybody knows this is an evolving landscape. So, Gail, this is phenomenal. So many great things for folks to listen to and to adopt. And if you had to summarize it into 5 points, what would you say? You're in an elevator and somebody says, "Hey, what are you doing? Give me your tips quickly. Five, 5 areas." What would those be, and in the right priority in your mind?
The right priority is define what you want to do with AI. You can't just do AI. What do you want to do with AI? You've got to define your objectives and your use cases. You've got to align with your business strategies first and foremost. Then select your high impact use cases based on that. You got to invest in a good data infrastructure, and you've got to have good data management practices. And that's, again, it's about data cleansing, data governance, your data lineage, models. That you've got to have a good, solid foundation around data. You've got to have quality data. If you don't have quality data, your models, regardless if they're purchased or not, are not going to fit. You need a good cross-functional team. This might manifest itself in something like a COE or an advisory board, but a good cross-functional team representing business, compliance, regulatory, legal, IT, maybe an external partner or two. Those are also going to help you inform your use cases. That's going to help you devise your strategy. That's going to give you line of sight for what you don't see from an IT perspective. You got to start small. You got to start small. Again, back to the POCs and the pilots. You start small, scale up, prove your use cases, prove your ability to manage your talent, prove your ability to support it, prove your partners, right? Make sure that they work. And I have yet to find a partner that will not give you a POC, for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days in some cases, especially with new technologies and when you're trying to tiptoe in. And then I don't want to say this is last because you have to prioritize it, but this is very, very, very important, is you've got to prioritize compliance and security. There's just no question about that.
Excellent. Excellent so much. I'm just so thrilled. This has been phenomenal, the way that you have laid it out. So, for folks listening, Gail is coming back with more podcasts. This is a series, and we're thankful that you have walked us through this journey. It is not an easy journey, and you have indeed allowed your mind to synthesize all this information, not just analyze it, and you've made it work into something very tangible, concrete, vision driven, metrics based, and secure moving forward. And that is a feat. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.